Hello and welcome to County Board Wrap-Up, our look at the key actions the board takes at its monthly meeting. I'm Kara O'Donnell, and today I'm going to be chatting with County Board Chair Christian Dorsey, as well as board member Eric Gutschall about the decisions they made at the November meeting that impact you, your family, and our community. Well, let's start off. We are in budget season yet again.
Aren't we always in budget season?
It kind of seems that way, but this is, I guess, the official kickoff of budget season. So what are some of the big hot items on this year's budget?
Well, I think the top line probably is that after a couple of years of looking at really constrained budgets where we were expecting revenue that was in no way sufficient to deal with continuing our existing levels of service, the outlook is different this year. And the manager's forecast look like we should have sufficient revenues to have a continuing services budget without requiring any dramatic changes in program delivery or increases in the tax rate. So we have asked the manager to prepare a proposed budget that does not rely on increasing the tax rate to come into balance. And in fact, if revenues are sufficient enough, we want him to give us alternatives for tax rate reductions, and that's something that I think after a couple of years of really difficult choices that we've had to make should be welcome news to our community.
I would think so. Now, what can we attribute that uptick a little bit?
Well, you know, many people will say, is it the Amazon effect?
Well, that was my next thing. Everybody kind of assumes that that's it, but that's still pretty early in the early stages.
Yeah, not so much. It doesn't appear that Amazon is really driving this at all, and we wouldn't expect it to. They've hired about 100 employees thus far. Most of them, I think, were already within the region, so there really hasn't been any, real shifting of people, nor have they made any substantial capital investments yet. So this is really not about the Amazon effect, but just what is cyclical strength in mostly the commercial real estate market, which, as we know, was a significant depressor of revenues over the past few years. And now that's shifted and hopefully will continue to shift upwards, which is also good news for residential taxpayers. It means that overall our budget outlook has improved.
How about things like, from what we had discussed back in the spring, things like the metro funding, the school funding, some of those things that are always kind of hot button issues?
Yeah. So, schools is an unknown. They run their own parallel budget process, so we don't yet know whether or not they're in the same position that we're looking at, where expected revenues should allow for them to deliver their program. That remains to be seen. But with Metro, the good news is that we have at least predictability in Metro's needs, so that has been baked in, so to speak, to our budget outlook. So we don't anticipate any real downside surprises to Metro, with one key caveat. There's a significant component of Metro which is unresolved at this point, and that is when the Silver Line Phase 2 will commence operations. That will have a budget impact, but it's too early to tell exactly how large that will be.
And they're saying sometime summer, fall of next year-ish?
I got to tell you, Kara, it could be anywhere. The earliest it could happen is around July 1st, 2020, but if I were a betting person, I would not think that we're going to come anywhere really close to that date, given all of the outstanding issues that are going on there.
Someone who takes that line, I'm heavily invested in that particular news.
Maybe we'll do another county board wrap-up about that.
How about any other things? What have you been hearing from the public, from the residents? Obviously, there will be plenty of time for residents to weigh in on their concerns with the proposed budget, but is there anything that's kind of bubbling to the surface early on?
I think it's a little early right now in terms of other than we had some specific advocacy around the recently adopted closeout funding, which is where we take what's left over from last year and we carry that forward into next year. We had some advocacy from our affordable housing and safety net community, but what we will be, as we gear up for this cycle that is just beginning now, the manager will come forward with his officially proposed budget in February, and then we will have a couple of months there until we ultimately adopt in April the budget, where we certainly expect to hear from all aspects of the community. That will be the schools community, that will be our nonprofits, that will be the business community, that will be all the stakeholders throughout the community who are going to let us know how they feel about what has been proposed and where we need to focus efforts. And then the other potential caveat to that, but which really gets more into our capital improvement plan cycle, would be stormwater funding to respond to the stormwater, the need for to update our stormwater infrastructure that has we've known about for quite some time, but it was really quite evident in the funding that or the flooding that we had last summer. So we're looking forward to the discussion around that, and just so everyone understands that we've got the budget first, and then following on to that will be the capital improvement cycle, which we ultimately adopt in June.
So, but the good news is, right off the top, is we are not facing another year of potential cuts in services or personnel, that belt tightening that we've seen the last couple of years. This is more a stay the course for now.
Well, we may change program delivery, but that's going to be in the sake of being more efficient and prioritizing what needs to be done. We're not going to be doing it as a fundamental necessity to maintain our basic levels of service, which is a much better place to be.
It is,
Yes.
and I actually think that the hot topic that we're going to end up finding as we move through this cycle is going to be balancing the growth in revenue, which fortunately is largely on the commercial side, but that also includes commercial residential, rental apartments, multifamily units, which means the higher the taxes are on those, the more that impacts rents. And we know that there is pressure on, upward pressure on rents. And so ultimately, I think our conversation at the board is going to be, how do we balance delivering the services and the amenities and all of the things that people want from their local government in a way that keeps affordability in the county, in the community, at a level that people are comfortable with and are able, that we're not displacing, in particular, those that are most vulnerable to even modest increases in their taxes.